Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It's the Friday, January 23rd, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go as always. It's Friday, it's almost time for our weekend, and that means it's time for our weekly economic report. Let's jump right into the stock market. Let's not waste any time. We have the S&P 500 right now trading at $6,927 a share, up 0.21% from yesterday. The NASDAQ right now is at $23,572 a share, up 0.57% from yesterday. And the Dow Jones taking a little bit of a hit today, trading at $49,165 in that range, down 0.44% from yesterday's close. Now, the overall market for these three has been a little bit volatile this week due to the shifting geopolitical tensions that we're seeing. We're seeing mixed earnings in the tech fields and those sectors. However, we're seeing some strong rebounds as well. Obviously, President Trump telling us that the EU tariffs are no longer going to be in effect has helped a lot of that rebound as well. So again, we're seeing a little bit of a volatility, but an overall rebound as well. Looking into our tech stocks, Microsoft is trading at $466.65 a share right now, up 3.44% from yesterday. NVIDIA, our chip makers for AI, trading at $187.59 a share, up 1.49% from yesterday. Alphabet and Google, trading at $330.15 a share, down slightly at 0.12% from yesterday's close. Amazon, up 2%, doing very well, trading at $239.02 a share. Oracle is trading at $178.35 a share, just slightly up 0.1% from yesterday's close. While Dell Technologies is trading at $97.33 a share, dropping a significant 3.88%. And Apple, down 0.04%, trading at $248.26 a share. Meta, doing very, very well, at $661.74 a share, up 2.18% from yesterday's close. Aristia, trading at $138.01, down 0.29% from yesterday. You know, I'm looking at Bitcoin too right now, and remarkably enough, it's at $89,849.81 a share, and that is up 1.28% from yesterday's close. Folks, that is up $1,137.29 from yesterday's finish. So overall, we're seeing our tech stocks, again, up due to the high revenue growth that we're seeing. We're seeing the expanding margins and, of course, the robust demand for AI infrastructure, the data centers, the enterprise cloud. We're seeing stocks like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet really being central to this AI boom. And as I've told you before, the government is bullish on it. So therefore, we're seeing these record high stocks coming in as of late. So we can expect that probably to stay in that same margin or increase from here on out. You know, I saw this article earlier this week for the 5 reasons why gold is on the rise. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to say that it hit a ultimate new record high of $5,001 just yesterday, remarkably enough. And right now, today, it's trading at $4,963.80 an ounce. Look at that, up 1.42% from yesterday's final close. Last Friday, it closed at $4,596.43 an ounce. That is an 8.8% increase week over week, folks. So gold is on the rise, as many of you will recall. I told you that if it stabilizes over the $4,200 mark, that is going to continue from there on out. And what has it done? It's continued to increase greatly in the past couple months. So I'm pleased to say that that forecast was correct. And as we see the markets the way they are, we're starting to see them rise as well. Looking at silver, another big day for silver, trading at $101 an ounce right now. It's up 4.81% from yesterday's close. And last Friday it was trading at $90.13 an ounce. So that means it's a 12.6% increase week over week, folks, making a hell of a return on that gold and silver, as always. And again, we look at the geopolitical uncertainty. We look at the possible Fed interest rate cuts and the strong investments by both the Fed and the central banks, also investing in gold. And it leads to a weaker dollar. Why does it lead to a weaker dollar? Well, because when the Fed cuts interest rates, you're going to see the price of gold continue to go up. You're going to see the weakening of the dollar. So it's a cause and effect here, folks, and we're seeing that playing right out right now. All right, let's move into oil. We've got Brent crude trading at $64.11 per barrel right now, down 1.73% from yesterday. And WTI crude trading at $60.14 per barrel, down 0.36% from yesterday's close. Like gold and silver, we're seeing again this geopolitical uncertainty, especially in the Middle East, folks. If we do end up going to war with Iran. And, I just saw earlier, this was from a couple days ago, in the Wall Street Journal, it said that Trump seeks decisive options for Iran as assets move into the Middle East. So what is that telling us? We're seeing the USS Abraham Lincoln. We're seeing the USS Gerald Ford. They're being both stationed right now in the Arabian Sea. And I'm also told possibly one also may be entering the Mediterranean Sea, these giant aircraft carriers. And it just shows us that we are getting ready for some sort of conflict potentially in this region. And if we do go to war with Iran and they decide to bomb the oil refineries all throughout the Middle East, if they decide to bomb the oil fields, and if they do decide to cut off the Strait of Hormuz, you're seeing roughly 25% of the world's global oil sales and all that trade come to a halt. So that's going to be very detrimental to a lot of different countries. You're going to see the price of oil it's going to continue to skyrocket. There's going to be the same amount of demand and much less supply. Right now, there is a glut of supply. That's why we're seeing the prices really stabilize in the region of $60 for quite some time now. But that could all change very, very quickly, folks. So let's never forget all of that. All right, I do want to go over some inflationary numbers I saw just this morning. And the one thing we're all worried about, of course, is what the inflation numbers are. So the most recent data is showing us that the U.S. inflationary rate for January 2026 is about 2.7, 2.8%, depending on whatever your source is. But they're saying that core inflation without food or energy is said to be about 2.6%. And again, those figures are year over year. The biggest kicker, I think, though, ladies and gentlemen, monthly CPI numbers show that there's a change in consumer prices, and they are up 0.3% from December of last month in 2025. So what's the big reason for this uptick in inflation? We've got food prices that are up 3.1% year over year. We're seeing mortgage and rent prices up 3.2% year over year. Now, I'm looking at energy, and remember I told you that the heating prices are going to go up 9.2% increase this winter. That number has changed now to 10.2%. So expect, again, the prices to increase for our heating oils, our natural gas prices. But the one thing that Trump is leading on in this sector is that he's got gas prices down 7.6% for a U.S. national average right now. Right now we're looking at $2.67 per gallon of regular unleaded. And again, the prices have been dropping for gasoline. That's obviously a benefit. Obviously, if we're traveling or if we're transporting our goods, when we see the price of oil at the pump go down, you're going to see the prices in the stores hopefully reflect that very, very soon. Except in California, of course. California, where the average state gas price for regular unleaded across the state is $4.21 per gallon. Now, if you're in LA, San Francisco, if you're in San Diego, obviously the prices will be a little bit higher. For example, in LA, the average typical price is $4.90 per gallon. And that's obviously if you can even find it for that. The San Francisco Bay Area is $4.66 per gallon. Remember, this is all unleaded too, folks. If you have to put in mid-grade or premium, you're obviously paying much, much more. San Diego is just a little under LA at $4.85 per gallon. But don't worry, Gavin Newsom's on it, folks. I'm sure he'll get right on it once he returns from Davos. Why he was even there is beyond me. I still don't understand that. Why he was there invited to speak. What was he going to speak about? Is he going to speak about economics? Is he going to speak about how to become a successful governor? I have no idea what he was going to speak about, but obviously, you know, he's now a salesman in the knee pad industry. Did you see that? How disgraceful that was? Putting Donald Trump's signature on knee pads and then telling world leaders that they're on their knees. He's never seen anything like it. This is a guy who has destroyed the state of California. Let me just tell you that much, and I know firsthand because I lived in California for 14 years. This is disgraceful. Now, he's used to the California press always continuing to grovel at his feet and tell him how wonderful he is and what have you. But this guy clearly was angry when he spoke, when he was interviewed. He had a lack of constraint, lack of composure. And this meltdown that he had, it was ridiculous. Through and through, it was absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to play you a clip. There's so many of them. And there's no shortage of stupidity from Gavin Newsom. But I want you all to hear this clip that he had. And he actually has the nerve to talk about Donald Trump being corrupt and being full of graft. Let's take a listen to clip one right now.
I'm not naive. These guys are going to try to take me down, not just Nate. I'm not naive about what I've said this morning and how that will be reflected in the official White House account. I'm not naive about the fact that he threatened to prosecute the Fed chief in the United States of America that has subpoena against another sitting governor, Tim Walz, who's literally going after his enemies with the FBI and the DOJ, these power ministries. I'm not naive about any of this. I'm not naive about the corruption and the graft at scale we've never seen in American history. I'm not naive about folks writing billion-dollar checks to Witkoff, to Jared Kushner for this new peace deal they're announcing today. I'm not naive about the fact the President of the United States made $1.5 billion+ in the last 12 months personally. How the hell are we putting up with this? We have to call this out. Unprecedented in American history, happening in real time on our watch. We have to be held to a higher level, all of us, myself notably, to a higher level of accountability at this moment.
Well, he is definitely stupid. I have to tell you that. If he's not naive, he's got to be stupid. But I'm glad to hear Gavin Newsom wants to be held to a higher standard. Did you hear that? He, of all people, needs to be held to a higher standard. He's got the #1 rate for homelessness. He's got the highest gas tax, the highest cost of living, the #1 worst state to do business in, the second worst roads in the country, the second worst public schools test scores in the country. It's unbelievable this guy gets up and starts criticizing other people when he's accomplished absolutely nothing. By the way, look at the allegations against Gavin Newsom in his state in California. $24 billion lost over 5 years on this homelessness scam that he's been in charge of. Zero oversight and zero record of any type of real outcome in all that. Then he's got his EBT scandal, the public assistance fraud. You've got criminals stealing EBT accounts from low-income residents that actually might need this. And they're stealing up to millions of dollars every single month. What's he done about it? Nothing. High-speed rail. Look at that project. He's got zero line done on this. Zero line. This thing's been in effect since 2008, folks. Zero railway has been completed. Zero stations, any type of timeline when this is going to be done. They've already used up $33 billion. For what? And now they're asking for $130 to $135 billion to complete this. The bullet train to nowhere. Supposed to go from LA to San Francisco. Then it got changed from Bakersfield to Merced. Why would you need a high-speed rail to go from Bakersfield to Merced in the Central Valley of California? Who would need this? They're largely mostly farming communities, folks. It makes no sense to me. And again, why has nothing been built? Why has there not been any timeline presented? Why have no stations been built? What is Gavin Newsom actually doing? And again, this falls again on Jerry Brown too, but it goes back to the Democrats. They want more money, more money. We don't know where the money's going, and they still want more. And nothing gets done. So again, it speaks to the corruption of Gavin Newsom through and through. And by the way, he's referring to, again, Tim Walz. He's pointing to Tim Walz's corruption, of course. We know that he's been involved in losing at least $9 billion of the taxpayer money in the state of Minnesota. And this is the guy who knowingly advocated for these programs that are ripping off the country, particularly his state. These child care programs, these meal programs, these learning centers that don't exist. Again, zero oversight in these Democratic states. Then he stirs the pot for these anti-ICE riots that are taking place right now. They're getting more and more out of control right now. And this is the guy who wanted to be vice president. Well, Gavin Newsom himself wants to be president of the United States. And look at how these guys conduct themselves. You know, the California gubernatorial candidate Stephen Hilton has actually petitioned Pam Bondi at the DOJ to really look into and investigate California's Medicaid, their housing programs, their food programs, and, of course, their temporary assistance benefits programs, looking at all the fraud in there. There's so much to uncover. And by the way, Donald Trump has also highlighted this as well. This is probably why Newsom was there to speak out against him. That's the only reason I can think of why he would be there. And that's all he really did. Any time he was interviewed, the only thing he talked about was Donald Trump. So he was there to speak out against the sitting U.S. president? I guess that's all he could do. And folks, while we're at it, can we look at the California voting election laws and look at the actual voting machines too and do a forensic audit on those? I'd be thrilled to see exactly the level of fraud that's wrought within all of them. That needs to happen right away. And by the way, while we're at it, can Gavin Newsom explain to us, since he's so honest and open, how on a $203,000 salary as governor, he could purchase a $9.1 million 6-bedroom, 6-bath, 3-level, chef's kitchen, formal living and dining room, large family room, a pool, a spa, sculptures, and a guest house on a salary of that size, folks? I can't even imagine that. How can he afford this? It's amazing to me. Where's he getting this money from? He's been in politics since 1997, when Willie Brown put him in as the board of supervisor. It's amazing to me. So for the past 30 years, this guy's been obviously a public servant. We know he owns a restaurant and a bar. No shock there, of course. Someone probably runs it for him. No, he runs a winery and a restaurant, excuse me. But still, same thing. Who's putting up all this cash for this guy? Remember, he was the middle class. He was less than a middle class guy. Mac and cheese and Wonder Bread, right? He was making his own meals. He couldn't figure out how to play baseball, so he learned and gave us this wonderful story. How did he buy a $9.1 million house? And by the way, he buys it off the market from Anthony Pritzker. Who's Anthony Pritzker? Well, he's a billionaire heir to the Hyatt hotel fortune. He's the brother of J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois. Nepotism much, Gavin? I think so. By the way, that's another great state destroyed by the Democrats, Illinois. But here's Newsom lecturing Donald Trump on graft. It's amazing, man. Then he talks about how Donald Trump earned $1 billion last year. It's amazing. Now, I've been told, actually, Donald Trump tripled his wealth. And he was already worth over $1 billion. So I don't know how he only earned $1.5 billion. So I'm sure it's probably much more than that. But all these presidents enrich themselves, don't they? All these political leaders enrich themselves. Why does he look at his aunt? Look at the money she's made of insider trading. Is he going to talk about her ever? Never. That's who he's learned from, folks. Yep. Did he forget Joe Biden's lucrative business deals as vice president in Russia, Ukraine, China, Kazakhstan, among other places? Does he have anything to say about that? Not a thing. Not a thing at all. How about Obama? Comes into public life worth about $1.3 million. Leaves office worth about $400 million. Probably earns much, much more now. All these ridiculous deals. How about the Clinton family? How about the Clinton family? By the way, a friend of mine sent me a synopsis on the daughter. Did you know that she earns, I guess she's a part of this NGO where she's getting millions of dollars from the USAID? And it was given to her under the Obama administration. Isn't that fun? Right? It was supposed to give afternoon meals to children at schools. She's earning, I think, roughly $4 million with it every single year. She spends about $100,000 a month. Yep. The rot runs deep, folks. The rot runs deep. But let's go back to Gavin Newsom. How about his little buddy following around at the World Economic Forum? Alex Soros, the son of George Soros. I don't even know who he is. He funds, obviously, every single left-wing politician he can buy, Gavin Newsom being one of them. All these riots across the country, Gavin Newsom. What do you have to say about that? Nothing. And by the way, has he ever taken Soros money? I think he has. In fact, George Soros put in during his recall campaign, right? Because Gavin Newsom was doing such a great job as governor, they had to recall him back in 2021. Oh, yeah. Yep. They funded him too. Just same with other billionaires across the state of California did. But George Soros doesn't even live in California, put money into Gavin Newsom to stay in office. I can only imagine why. But it's funny, he had his little minion following him around who really pulls the strings for him, by the way. And that's all. That's Gavin Newsom in a nutshell. A real grifter, a pay-for-play candidate, and a con man, just like every single other politician. Yep, go listen to one of my shows back in September. I had to do the 30 reasons why Gavin Newsom should never become president of the United States. And I stand by each and every one of those reasons. All right, now that my blood pressure is skyrocketed and my pulse rate is through the roof, let's go on to some more economic articles for today, and then we'll jump into what's happening around the world. Lots going on, as we can imagine. This is in CNBC. It says, Trump floats the idea to extend business tax breaks to homeowners. I like this idea. You know, when Trump has a good idea, it's usually a great idea, and it's something many of us can get behind. Now, he said at Davos during his speech, he said, the craziest thing is that a person can't get depreciation on a house. But when a corporation buys it, they get depreciation. So obviously he's referring to the Larry Finks of the world, who also were at Davos this weekend, trying to sell his digital currency, of course. They're also responsible for BlackRock buying up lots of single-family home developments across the country, buying you out of the market. And Trump went on to say something he's thinking about. And I think this is a pretty good idea. So the depreciation deduction is obviously based on the property's basis or upfront purchase plus the improvements to it and when it's placed in service. So the annual tax break also depends on the accounting method used, which outlines how many years the owner has to recover the cost basis. So in a nutshell, what they do is if the property is later sold at a profit, the IRS can then recoup some of the deduction claim known as the depreciation recapture. So there's a way for you to obviously gain from this. Now, these comments come after President Trump has talked about housing affordability efforts, and he actually signed an executive order on Tuesday of this week, to ban large institutions like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, among others. These big investors worth trillions of dollars, these companies, from buying single-family homes. This is a good step. I like this idea. They also need to stop foreign investors from doing the same thing. And since we're just talking about Gavin Newsom in California, a foreign investor bought up, I think, 10 lots off the coast of right next to PCH in California, where the Palisades fires burned all that land. Yeah, sold 10 lots for $66 million. And Gavin Newsom actually put in a bill that made it cheaper for people to come in from the outside to buy up this land for a cheaper price. Never forget who these people work for. So yeah, the cost of living, obviously, folks, has become a major key theme among many American policymakers. Obviously, we're talking about housing, we're talking about healthcare, food and other living expenses, of course. But I think this could be a real good thing if Donald Trump goes through and does this. And we'll have to see exactly how it works. But why would we give benefits to one group of people and not another group of people? It doesn't make any sense. We should be doing this for everybody. Why wouldn't we? So we'll see if this actually comes into fruition. And of course, obviously, this will benefit homeowners in the future should he do this. Now, I got this other article in the Wall Street Journal also talking about homes becoming affordable in this country. And obviously, there's this bifurcation between the trapped renters that really want to buy homes for prices that are much lower so they can afford them. That way they can get into the property ladder themselves. We're seeing that the average home buying for the average American now is at age 40. About a decade or so ago, the average age was 28. So we're seeing a whole generation of people that are kind of priced out of the market right now, which obviously upsets many people. But millions of existing homeowners now want the values of these homes to stay high. So obviously we have this conflicting interest between obviously these two different groups, making it much more difficult for policymakers to give young Americans a leg up in the brutal housing market that continues to stay greatly elevated. Now, Trump has come out with the 50-year mortgage, which, again, I don't like this idea. I don't think it's beneficial. Going to the known fact, I just told you the average home is now bought by someone 40 years of age, the average. That's a big problem. So you're going to be 40 years of age and be stuck in a mortgage for 50 years? The interest you're going to be paying on that is going to greatly exceed the home. Why would anybody do that? But now he's also proposed Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac to buy billions of dollars worth of mortgage bonds to help push down the borrowing costs that have been greatly elevated. Again, a big problem. So earlier this month, Trump also suggested banning Wall Street investors from, again, buying these single-family homes. I like that idea. And he's also expected a plan to let Americans tap into their 401ks for a down payment. But here's the problem with this. You're investing in your retirement with a 401k or what have you, and now we're going to dig into that to buy a home. So it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're still going to be losing out on money. I mean, maybe some people would like this idea. I don't know if you'd want to dip into your savings, though, to, again, go in, devalue that to buy a home that's exorbitantly expensive and be put on a 50-year mortgage. I don't think that policy is going to sell. I don't think a 30-year car payment is going to sell. It's just simply not going to be something, again, people would like. But if these mortgage rates were to fall, let's say they do fall, 4.5% without a pickup in new housing supply is expected, and home prices will then increase by 1/10 over the next 3 years. That's what's according to an analysis by the AEI Housing Center. Then, of course, we have evicting institutional landlords from the housing market. Won't move the needle either. We're seeing Wall Street investors own only 1% of U.S. family homes, though their share is higher in parts of the country like Atlanta and Nashville. Again, where a lot of people are moving to. A lot of people are moving to Nashville now. It's a much more desired place than L.A. or New York or Chicago or what have you. So, again, we see this trade-off with all these things. What's the reality? What can we do to make housing more affordable for the average American again? And I'm not one of these people that say once someone graduates from college, they should just jump right into a house. I'm realistic. I know people have to save up. I understand this. But the fact that it's not becoming a reality for so many people is a big problem. People are very upset about this, and you can imagine why. So there's got to be a way to figure this out. And one of the things I also would like to mention to you, when you are in a country where we have roughly 1/3 of the population has no right to be in this country, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm talking about the 45 to 50 million illegals that live in this country. I'm talking about the 55 million visa holders that have since expired that, again, have no right to be in this country. That's a big problem. That puts a big strain on the market. That puts almost 1/3 of the pressure, or 30%, into these prices now. So you have more people. Obviously, there's more people and the same amount of housing. The cost is going to go up, right? Makes sense. That's a big problem. So my theory here is that if we actually were to get this under control, and I'm not saying we're going to get rid of 100 million people, But if you can get some of these people out of the country that don't have a right to be here, you're going to ease up on that housing market quite a bit. Supply and demand, folks. Economics 101. That's just the way it is. If you're not going to build new housing, and you have the existing housing, the only way the prices will go down is if you have less people here to buy them. That's the way it comes to. Oh, by the way, there's a 56% increase in the median household income now to $132,000 is needed across the board to return to affordability to where it was just 6 years ago. We're much beyond that at this point. Much beyond that point. It says their wages are rising faster than home values. I don't buy that for a second, but it would still take around a decade to inflate incomes to this level. Yeah, exactly. Because the wages aren't staying up with inflation. You have people getting out of college now with, six-figure student loan debt. What are they going to do? How are they going to pay that off? And the interest rates that go along with it. It's going to be another major, major problem, folks. They're looking, to have the mortgage rates maybe fall. This would give these home buyers maybe the same power that they had in 2019, although it's very likely outside of a major recession that these rates would lower to this rate. So Trump has got his work cut out for him in this case. And again, I told you before, I'll say it again to you. If Trump can't fix this economy, and really by the end of March, we're going to have a big problem trying to win these midterms. Republicans coming up for 2026. It's going to become a big, big problem. So he's really got his work cut out for him. I hope he's got people working on this, but there's got to be ways we can work towards more affordability for more younger people. And again, you can go look at the average age for people going back to like the 1950s, when they're 23, 24, then it moves up a little bit, then it moves up. Around 2000, it was, 28, 29, you bought your first house. All right. And it was like that for a couple decades. Now it's 40. Well, again, people don't like that. People want to buy homes. They want that chance to own their own property. They don't want to rent their entire lives. They want to get into these investments, but they want more opportunities. And when they're not being allotted the opportunities in a good paying job, or they're stuck renting their entire lives, that upsets a lot of people. That's how you come up with the Mamdamis of the world. Anyways, let's move on. I've got a good article for us in Bloomberg. I actually like this article. It says that the United States walks away from the World Health Organization, leaving an unpaid tab of about $260 million. I'm not opposed to this for many different reasons. One, we have so many different health organizations in our own country. We have the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, we have the HHS. We have a plethora of college universities that do extensive research on medical care and medical procedures and what have you. I don't think we need to be a part of this, folks. This organization that China helped fund, and of course, they lied to us during, obviously, the COVID pandemic in 2020. But now over the last year, President Donald Trump has now ordered the United States to withdraw from the World Health Organization, and the process was then formalized on Thursday. So the U.S. is now going to be leaving behind this unpaid debt of about roughly $260 million. Now, I know some people are, throwing caution into the wind. They're saying this is bad. Trump is trying to divorce himself from all these different organizations we're a part of. And we're a part of a lot of different organizations. So my question to you is, what is our benefit of being a part of the World Health Organization? I can't seem to find one thing. What can't we do in the United States on our own, under our own ingenuity, that the World Health Organization is providing for us? There has to be some benefit to being a part of this. If we're going to spend this much money, and again, it's a lot of money every single year to be a part of, we should be getting some sort of benefit from it, not the other way around. Now, all the funding to this health agency has been terminated, and of course, people of the United States that have been working in the World Health Organization, they're now moving away from it. And again, we're seeing all these people in leadership bodies, these working groups, starting to come back to the United States. So again, this is happening. It's in process. But look at this. This is something I thought that was interesting in this article. It says the withdrawal notice left the World Health Organization without its top donor. Between 2022 and 2023, the United States contributed nearly $1.3 billion. Look at that. So again, what do we get in return for this $1.3 billion? Who benefited from it? I doubt it was us. Now they're saying without the money, the agency's works contain diseases like HIV, polio, and Ebola are now at risk. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we know how to eradicate these types of diseases. HIV is largely a behavioral disease. We've eradicated polio in this country. Ebola, obviously, we spent this money. We still can't figure out how to treat these things. So again, what is the World Health Organization doing with this money? What research are they coming up with that's groundbreaking? That's revolutionary. That's stopping all of this. That's the big thing here. And what can't we do in the United States with this same amount of money? They go to all these different organizations that they're doing that we cannot. And again, I highly doubt we would find cures or ways to, mitigate these issues in so many different countries that we cannot share with the entire world. We've been doing this with our technology and innovations for well over 100 years in this country. So again, I highly doubt we need a World Health Organization to continue the spread of course, treatments to stop a lot of these awful diseases and conditions. I just don't buy it. And again, we have people, at the NIH. Jay Bhattacharya was on with Laura Ingraham last night, and he was, again, behind this. If there's nothing that we need this for, what's the point of spending the money? What's the point of it, folks? If there's no point to it, we should be getting out of it. That's my take on it. I stand behind that. I think we obviously are looking at ways to improve our own society. HHS is doing a very good job, obviously, to provide immunizations to low-income countries across the globe. We're also looking for ways to make our American diet much better, taking out the poisons out. And why the hell aren't we doing that already? These food dyes, the glyphosate in the food supply, the pesticides, the fungicides that are sprayed on all these foods. Why aren't we working on that? Why aren't we stopping that? Where is the World Health Organization to ban this, by the way? We know much of this causes cancer, causes other problems and development and what have you. Again, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to see this. Now, the State Department has then stated now that their work on the global health initiatives with roughly 60 different countries to expand the oversight for disease surveillance and, of course, to manage collaboration, again, which could serve as a workaround for the World Health Organization's pandemic agreement. By the way, this is the same World Health Organization that Joe Biden was trying to get us into a treaty with, circumventing the Senate, to allow them to come in and say, this is how you're going to respond during a pandemic. I mean, that in and of itself would have been disastrous. Thankfully, it didn't pan out. But that is really it comes down to globalism. Are we going to let a foreign body run by someone like Tedros Ghebreyesus, a left-wing revolutionary from Eritrea, come out and tell us what we need to do during a so-called pandemic? Again, we live in interesting times, folks. But I do think that cutting this support isn't a bad thing. Again, I like diplomacy. I like the communication aspect of a lot of these things. I don't like these bills that we pay, that we spend billions upon billions of dollars and get nothing from it in return. That is a major course of concern for us. I think we're a very resilient country, and I think when we put the right people in power, we can solve these problems on our own, and of course we can share these ideas with the rest of the world. Speaking of the rest of the world, and of course governing bodies, look at this. This is in the Jerusalem Post. This one made me shake my head this morning. So it said that Prime Minister Netanyahu accepts President Trump's invitation to join Board of Peace to become a founding member. This is, again, asinine in and of itself. This is a guy who bombed 80% of Gaza, killed over 72,000 people, most of them women and children, by the way, innocent people, by the way. And he's going to sit on a Board of Peace? This would be like after the Armenian genocide, the leader of Turkey would come in and be sitting on a Board of Peace for Armenia. I mean, this is just stupidity in and of itself. I don't understand this at all. This is a guy who, since the ceasefire, has killed over 400 different people, who's still shelling and killing people inside Gaza as we speak, every single day. I don't understand it for the life of me. It just goes to show you that some of these things are completely stupid. Really, in and of itself, it's completely stupid. Again, who is going to hold these people accountable? Does that mean Netanyahu has a say in now what happens in Gaza? I thought he was supposed to have no say. According to the UN Charter, they're not supposed to have any type of overreach into this region. Now, again, if he has concerns about what's happening in Gaza, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner are going to obviously have a say in all that on behalf of Netanyahu. I don't think there's any shortage of that. So again, this $1 billion fee to get in this, again, I don't know if this is going to extend outside of Gaza. I don't know. Are we going to be policing the world with this board of peace now? It's ridiculous. We've got Israel, Egypt, Azerbaijan, now joining Bahrain, the UAE, Belarus, Morocco, and Hungary. I actually like the leader of Hungary. I like Viktor Orban. He's a standout guy. One of the few in Europe. Joining this team of Trump, Rubio, Witkoff, Kushner, and now Sir Tony Blair. Look at Tony Blair. It's the English's fault that the region itself is in such turmoil today. And it looks like they're going to let Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney join in principle, I suppose. Who the hell knows? Kosovo joining? They can't even handle their own conflicts with Serbia. Azerbaijan can't even keep people safe, in the Armenians and safe in the Artsakh region of Azerbaijan. And they're going to create peace in the Middle East. Again, it's funny to me to see this. I take it with a grain of salt. This is so ridiculous. Really, it is. And again, where is the holding people accountable when you have one of the leaders in this group, Netanyahu, not even upholding his end of the ceasefire right now? Right now, he's bombing southern Lebanon during a ceasefire. He's shelling and performing airstrikes inside Gaza during a ceasefire. So what's to say that he's going to stop this? And when has anyone called him out on this? Nobody I can hear in the mainstream media. Unless, of course, you listen to a show like mine. So it really begs the question, are these people actually seeking peace, or who are they working on behalf of? And what is going on with this $1 billion fee? Where's this going? Who's getting the money for this? This is going towards the $112 billion necessary to rebuild Gaza, to these lucrative beachfront property resorts that they have in mind. The two builders, Witkoff and Kushner. One can only know him, and one will only know as time goes on. I just thought this was funny and wanted to share this with all of you. Who knows what's going to happen with this? Things didn't go too well for Jack Smith on the Hill yesterday. This was not good at all for him. And he's under a lot of scrutiny right now during his two criminal investments and charges, bringing President Trump to so-called justice. And as many of you know, he was involved in the classified court documents case, again, which was completely asinine. And of course, he was involved in the efforts to bring Trump to justice over President Trump's stance on the 2020 election. But it got a lot worse. Jack Smith was playing like a babe in the woods. And we saw Republicans, obviously leading by Chairman Jim Jordan, of course. And they brought up a lot of these allegations that Smith brought in this politicized criminal charges against Trump, who was at the time the leading candidate to, again, interfere in this 2024 election. Once Trump won the election, everything went right away. So were there any real charges there? I think not. When you have Joe Biden stealing from the SCIF classified documents as his time as senator, again, stealing classified documents, bringing them home, keeping them in his garage next to his Corvette, Robert Hur found nothing of any cause there to continue on with. Bill Clinton could have audio files of classified documents in a sock drawer. Supreme Court said that was absolutely fine. So where the hell does Jack Smith get the gall to go after President Trump on this? He's living in the Netherlands and all of a sudden he comes back to do this? By the way, they asked him his party affiliation. He had no idea. Okay, I believe that. It's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, this is how these people operate. But it got worse for Jack Smith. Got absolutely worse for him because He was questioned by Chip Roy about the subpoena of telephone records. Take a listen to this. You won't believe this.
Mr. Smith, how many members of Congress or the Senate did you subpoena phone toll records?
As I sit here right now, I do not recall a specific number.
Is this the complete list right here? Well, let me ask you this. Am I on this list? Did you target my records and subpoena my phone toll records?
My understanding is your records were subpoenaed by prosecutors before I became special counsel.
Well, staff would put this up on the screen. I'm thankful for the great staff who discovered the email where I learned for the first time a few weeks ago that my phone records were indeed targeted. We called AT&T and we've learned that they were given to the Department of Justice, as this email indicates, because I've been in communication with Scott Perry, one of my colleagues here in Congress, who literally had his phone taken from him in front of his family. And of course,
So look at this. He's got Kevin McCarthy on this list. He's got Jim Jordan. All these Republicans on this list. Unbeknownst to them. What is this guy doing? Look, Smith said he wanted to come along and speak publicly about his work. He had no idea what he was talking about. Anytime he was asked a question, I don't really know. What was the purpose of all this? And then, people like Gavin Newsom go to the World Economic Forum and say, Trump is going after his political foes. Really? Or are these people actually committing crimes? What crime can we point to in any of the four cases? Probably Alvin Bragg, Letitia James. Obviously, the two cases with Jack Smith, the Fonnie Willis case. That would be the one that would maybe hold some water. Fell right apart in and of itself. And all these people were in cahoots with the White House at the time. So what does that lead you to believe, folks? Were there any real cases here that we could actually look at, any type of crime? And here's another thing we should consider. Joe Biden gave the DOJ the carte blanche to go into Mar-a-Lago using the lethal force of a deadly weapon if necessary to the home of a former sitting president. Let that one sink in for you. This is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. By the way, Republicans also raised the question about Smith's team approving $20,000 in payments to an FBI source. Yep. To gather intel on President Donald J. Trump. Yep, so Smith charged Trump with attempting to illegally overturn the 2020 election. Again, what did he do to overturn the election? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. There was nothing there. What, because he had phone calls with the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia? The fact that he voiced his opinion that he felt the election was rigged? Look at all the fraud we've come up with since 2020. My goodness. Look at all the information that's come to light. States where counties were validating votes that they figured out later on they couldn't validate. And several of these counties that would have easily flipped several states. I believe Georgia and Arizona in and of themselves. This is a big problem. And then we're talking about retribution. Again, it's mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling that we're dealing with all this right now. Now, will anything happen to Smith? Probably not. But again, it just shows you the hypocrisy of those on the left right now who are crying for President Trump's retribution. Oh, by the way, Just the News has a great article out, and it says here that the axis of anarchy, we're looking at Minnesota and the anti-shutdown now, backed by the Democratic Socialist of America, communists, unions, which really communism and unions are one and the same by and large, and CCP, that'd be the Chinese Communist Party, tied networks. Look at this. It says here, after this collection of, these far-right activist groups, the planned shutdown was announced early last week, called ICE out of Minnesota. Day of Truth and Freedom. Well, these people don't believe in freedom. They believe in accosting ICE officers, for God's sakes, impeding of federal operations. But here we go. It says includes plans for a large-scale march in Minneapolis, a day of no work, no school, and no shopping. Yeah, that's going to be great for their economy, isn't it? says here that the Radical Party for Socialism and Liberation, the left-wing breakthrough news media outlet, said that the Manhattan-based Marxist Revolutionary People's Forum are all involved in either promoting or organizing the Minnesota shutdown effort. Just the News previously reported on how all of these and other radical activist groups have leadership links and financial ties to a funding network backed by the wealthy businessman and self-avowed communist Neville Singham. Oh, see how that works? So these people, all these groups, by the way, they're not organic in and of itself. These are bought and paid for communists. The Democratic Socialists helped to propel Zoran Mamdani to the Gracie Mansion in New York City. We're seeing the SEIU, that'd be the Service Employees International Union. They're being listed as co-host of this shutdown, right? That take in lots and lots of money, as well as the United Auto Workers also endorsed this big strike. So here we go. We have a woman who intentionally blocked ICE in the street. She then drove her car at one of the agents and was shot in the process. And now, of course, we are protesting in the streets that ICE is there. By the way, since ICE, this whole incident with Renee Good, ICE arrested roughly, I think it was 1,500 criminal illegal aliens in the streets. And some of these people had some heinous crimes attributed to them. Why they're in the streets, I have no idea. Why the city of Minneapolis, why the state of Minnesota wouldn't coordinate with ICE is beyond me. They all pretend to claim to do so, but instead they do the exact opposite. So things are heating up in Minnesota, as one could see. And will this come to a T? Will there be more violence in the streets? Will there be more chaos? Will we see a repeat of what happened with the George Floyd riots? One can only know. But things are obviously heating up, and are these people going to clash with ICE again? And will any of these people be held accountable? These people funding all this, should this happen? Again, one can only know. When is this going to stop, folks? Well, whenever the money flow dies out. That's the only time it will, right? Now, I've got a good article, too, and I want to read this to you before I read something positive before we go into our weekend. It says here that Arizona AG Kris Mayes widely suggests that residents can shoot masked ICE agents under the state's self-defense laws. This is crazy. This is the New York Post. I can't believe I have to read this to you. How could one person come out and say that you can actively shoot a government agent? This is beyond ridiculousness. Now, it's one thing to protest or disagree with ICE or what have you. I don't know why you would, unless, of course, they're violating the law, which, again, I can understand that. I don't have the Stephen Miller approach that everyone is immune from prosecution. But this is a completely different thing. You can actively go out and shoot people, and this woman, the leading law enforcement officer in the state, isn't going to do a damn thing about it? Now, this woman sat down and warned Arizonans to stand your ground laws, which allows citizens to use deadly force if they believe they're in imminent danger. This could become, obviously, a recipe for disaster if protesters clash with immigration officers in the streets or if they're being arrested. So now we're going to have possibly illegal aliens shooting at ICE agents? I mean, this is obviously crazy. This is crazy talk. And these people are, again, pouring fuel on the fire. She went on to say that, and we have a stand your ground law that says that if you reasonably believe, so I guess that's, again, up to one's own discernment, but if you reasonably believe that your life is in danger in your house or in your car or on your property, that you can defend yourself with lethal force. So let me ask you this. If ICE comes to a house and they have a warrant and they enter the home, does that mean this person can now start shooting at them? Now, we've seen how this has happened in regular police work. The left hates this. We've seen cops go to jail when they go into a home and they start shooting, retaliating if somebody shoots, getting arrested and what have you. So now we're going to put this back on people now to come in and say that If you're being lawfully detained, you can shoot at somebody if you feel threatened. Again, even the reporter cautioned that her remarks would be interpreted as a license to residents to shoot a federal agent. And what was her response? She said, well, I'm not encouraging violence. Really? So she says, if you're being attacked by someone who is not identified as a peace officer, how do you know? The state's top prosecutor pressed, adding that real cops don't wear masks. Well, lady, if these people weren't doxxed online, if their lives were not threatened by, again, the violent mobs that are out there, they wouldn't have to wear masks. They wouldn't have to do this. And by the way, many of these people are wearing the appropriate gear that identify who they are. Now, some of them don't have their badges out at a given time. Again, for the reasons of that. But this is why they're wearing these masks. They're not wearing these masks just to wear the masks. So there's two things that could be true at once. By the way, these people never have an issue if people wear masks when they go to loot, rob, and steal. Just look at Gavin Newsom in California. Never said a damn thing about criminals wearing masks ever. Anthony Fauci loved masks. In fact, everyone had to wear a mask to enter a business back in 2020, 2021, even in 2022 in some places. That was okay. That's okay to wear a mask. But if you're wearing a mask to conceal your identity so your family isn't doxxed, which is what these people do now, then all of a sudden you're just a complete criminal. So how does it work both ways? I mean, this is amazing. This is what these people are pushing. The leading law enforcement officer in the state of Arizona, this is absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, she vowed to prosecute any ICE agent who violates state laws and operations after what happened in Minnesota. Again, okay, fine. If ICE violates state laws, go ahead. But what you're calling for is violence against law enforcement officers. Would she say this about police in her state? If police show up to your house and you feel scared, and they haven't properly identified themselves yet, just shoot them. That's what they're telling people. Oh, it's unbelievable where we are right now. You know what? This article is good. I've got a couple more I want to fit in really quickly. We got a few minutes remaining, so we'll try to get through this. But the Federalist has an article out talking about the plummeting murder rate, showing how law and order actually works. And again, we can get behind these things. But what did they find here? Let's take a look. Maybe the AG of Arizona can figure this out. God only knows. But in September 2024, the Department of Homeland Security reported that to Congress that they had tracked some 435,000 illegal aliens. These people have criminal records and convictions that are not in custody. About 29,000 of these criminal illegal aliens had been convicted of murder and or sexual assault. Well, Tricia McLaughlin, the DHS Assistant Secretary, told the broadcast that 70% of illegal aliens arrested by ICE in President Trump's first year in office have had criminal records and or facing criminal charges, including those with connections to terrorism. Well, what do you think happens when you take criminal illegal aliens off the streets? We find a decrease in crime. I just told you. Even after Renee Nicole Good was shot, ICE then later detained 1,500 people with criminal records, lots of them for sexual assault and murder. And by the way, a newly released report shows that U.S. murder rates in the U.S. had dropped to its lowest level in 125 years, since records have been kept. Do you think that's a result of people removing illegal aliens off the streets? Probably, I'd have to say so. Yeah, it goes all the way back to the year 1900. And we're looking at extremely low rates of, again, murder in this country. Again, we've had dips since then, but right now we're at our absolute lowest. I think that might be indicative of what ICE does. And again, I'm not one of these cheerleaders for ICE saying they can do no wrong. I still think ICE needs to operate within due process of the law. I think ICE officers should be able to identify themselves, and they should always bring a warrant to someone's house before entering. Everyone has a right to the Fourth Amendment. And everyone in this country has a right to due process. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. All right, folks. By the way, there is going to be According to Fox Weather, and most of you know this by now, this 2,300-mile winter storm that's going to be impacting roughly 40 states across our country. Right now we're seeing states of emergency already in 11 states: Arkansas, Virginia, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Minnesota, Minneapolis, Missouri, Minnesota, Kentucky, New York, and Kansas. Also Washington, D.C. And by the way, Greg Abbott has issued a disaster declaration for more than 130 counties across the lone state. So if you're in any of these states, you might see energy compromised over the weekend. There will be, obviously, lots of ice in lots of the southern states that are not so used to it. And anywhere where there's going to be 3 inches of ice, you're probably going to have power outages, folks. So just know that if you're going out this weekend, and obviously if you're going to be traveling in any of these states, the weather conditions are not going to be great. So please go out with caution and safety. If you need to, ahead of time before this winter storm should hit, try to go and, prep up for the weekend. Prep up for a couple days should anything happen. Do whatever you need to be self-sufficient, of course, and obviously provide safety for you and your family. But if you're going to go out, please always be safe out there. Folks, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much. I hope you learned something from the show. Hope you'll share with others. Make sure you're keeping your minds sharp, body strong. Make sure you're staying prepped with food, water, ammo, money, gold, tools, anything to be self-sufficient. Always. Folks, thanks again for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Have a blessed weekend. Stay safe out there, and I will see you back here Monday for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.